Prince Philip was a steadfast figure at Queen Elizabeth's side for 74 years. Some would even say that Philip spent those 74 years living in her shadow. Whatever the case, there are a number of surprising facts about Prince Philip that you may not know. Prepare to have your image of Prince Philip altered, because here are 8 of the most interesting things that no one tells you about the Queen's consort. Number 1. He was a refugee. Philip was born on the 10th of June, 1921, on the Greek island of Corfu. Corfu is known for its pristine beaches, interesting history, and ancient monuments. Philip would have had no time to enjoy all that Corfu had to offer, because his family were forced to flee for their lives only a year after Philip's birth in 1922. You see, Philip had been born into the Greek royal family. Being born into royalty is normally a ticket to a free and easygoing life full of luxury. Unless you're Greek. The people of Greece had a complicated relationship with their royal family. Philip's grandfather, George I, was assassinated in 1913 when he refused to give money to a beggar. And Philip's uncle, Constantine, was forced to abdicate twice during his reign. The second abdication is what forced Philip's family to flee the country. Philip's father, Prince Andrew, took his wife and 5 children to safety in France. On the boat trip from Greece, the infant Philip was placed inside a fruit box to keep him secure. However, as once in France, his parents' marriage deteriorated, and his mother fell severely ill. Number 2. The fascinating life of Princess Alice. Philip's mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg, was born deaf. During the troubles in Greece that led to her brother-in-law's abdication, she worked as a nurse, but no amount of medical training could have prepared her for the illness that came upon her in France. In 1930, Princess Alice was diagnosed with schizophrenia and committed to an insane asylum in Switzerland. Alice had religious delusions in which she claimed to be close friends with both Jesus Christ and the Buddha. While in Switzerland, she was treated by celebrity psychologist Sigmund Freud, who recommended harmful and misogynistic treatment aimed at destroying Alice's autonomy. Alice attempted to escape from the asylum several times and eventually was released. For several years, she did not see Philip and traveled around Europe in disguise. By 1949, Alice had returned to Greece, where she founded an order of Orthodox nuns. But when war came to Greece again in 1967, Alice fled and secretly moved in with Philip and Queen Elizabeth in Buckingham Palace, where she died in 1969. Number 3. Prince Philip's military service. While his mother was ill, Philip was shuffled between relatives and eventually found happiness at a boarding school in Scotland. After boarding school, a promising military career followed. In May 1939, on the eve of the Second World War, Philip began his education at the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth. While at the college, Philip won 2 prizes for being the best cadet, and in 1940 was conscripted to fight against the Axis powers. Philip spent 6 months keeping the peace in the Indian Ocean, and in 1941 proved his bravery at the Battle of Cape Matapan in Greece. It was while he was at Dartmouth that the most important meeting of his life happened in 1939. He met Princess Elizabeth Windsor. Number 4. A royal romantic. While the princess was visiting Dartmouth with her father, George VI, while King George spent the day with high-ranking admirals, the 18-year-old cadet Philip was tasked with looking after the 13-year-old Princess Elizabeth. Sparks flew instantly. Elizabeth was said to be in love from the very beginning, but later on, Philip would play it cool, telling reporters, "We'd met at Dartmouth, and as far as I was concerned, it was a very amusing experience. Going on board the yacht and meeting them and that sort of thing, and that was that." As we all know, that wasn't quite the end of the young pair's relationship. The two exchanged letters while Philip fought abroad and became engaged 8 years after their fateful meeting in 1947, and the two were married in late 1947. Number 5. A loving father. Shortly after marrying, Philip and Elizabeth welcomed their first son into the world, Prince Charles. He was soon followed by sister Anne and brothers Andrew and Edward. Philip was anything but with his children. He was said to have an incredibly special bond with daughter Anne. Both Anne and her father shared a passion for sport and horse riding, and Anne was said to make her father extraordinarily proud when she won the Sports Personality of the Year in 1971. Anne was full of praise for her father in interviews, saying that he was always there and that he provided her with a huge amount of encouragement and respect. Philip's relationship with eldest son Charles was said to be most difficult. But Charles acknowledged the enormous amount of respect he had for his father when he praised his father's devotion and service towards the Queen and his family. Number 6. Breaking the news. In 1952, Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip were on a solo tour of key Commonwealth countries. Elizabeth's father, George VI, was very ill and unable to make the trip himself. In fact, George was so ill that it had become normal for Elizabeth to take mourning cloths with her wherever she went on trips away from home. A crucial stop on this trip was Kenya. Kenya would not gain its independence from the British for another 11 years, and tensions between Kenyan nationalists and the ruling British powers were high. Elizabeth and Philip's trip had all the potential to become a disaster, only it wasn't. On the 5th of February 1952, Elizabeth and Philip fed elephants at a local watering hole and spent the night at the now famous Treetops Hotel. Meanwhile, in London, early in the morning on the 6th of February, George VI had died. Communication between London and Kenya was sparse, so it took some time for details to reach the royal party. Later that afternoon, Philip took Elizabeth to Sagana Lodge, a wedding present from the Kenyan government, and told her the news. Alone, the two of them took a walk around the grounds. George VI was buried 2 weeks later, and for the first time, the funeral of a king was broadcast on television. People scoffed at the vulgarity of showing such a somber moment on TV, but Philip was entranced. And when it came time for his wife to be crowned, it was Philip who suggested she be crowned live on TV. Number 7. Coronation Planner. Elizabeth was due to be crowned 16 months after her father's death, and there was no one she trusted more to be in charge than her husband. Philip was made head of the coronation committee and given 14 months to plan proceedings. And it was at that very first meeting of the committee that he shared the revolutionary idea of showing the whole event on TV. To say that the royal establishment were unhappy with Philip's suggestion would be an understatement. Elizabeth's royal family thought that it would be insulting to allow commoners to witness what should be a royals-only event. Elizabeth heard both sides of the argument and decided her husband was right. She argued that broadcasting the coronation would bring her closer to her people and break down barriers in British society. Philip and Elizabeth were right. The coronation became one of the biggest events in history. Sales of TVs skyrocketed, and 27 million people sat down to watch on the big day. The coronation wasn't the only high-publicity event that Prince Philip had a hand in managing. He also worked to ensure that daughter-in-law Princess Diana's funeral was an event worth remembering. Number 8. Supportive grandfather. When Princess Diana tragically died at the age of 36 in a car crash, she left behind 2 young sons, 15-year-old William and 13-year-old Harry. One of the defining images of Princess Diana's 1997 funeral is of William and Harry walking behind her coffin, their father, uncle, and grandfather at their side. With William and Harry shaken following the death of their mother, it was Prince Philip who offered them the support they needed. This was a direct continuation of the support that Philip had offered his own children growing up. The encouragement that Princess Anne had seen when she was a little girl was on full force here, as Prince William grew exponentially close to his grandfather in the days following his mother's death and was able to take full advantage of the support that Philip offered. So there we have it. From refugee to war hero to devoted husband, father, and grandfather, Prince Philip lived a life of adventure and excitement. Did any of these facts surprise you? Perhaps there's a story we missed out. Let us know down below. And don't forget to hit subscribe.